What up, it's your boy Dick Incredible, and I am back at it again, and this is my discussion / review for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episode 10, the season finale, titled Equality of Mercy. Dude, this episode, this is how you do Star Trek, man. Let's talk about it. This episode came in all kinds of different, man. I did not expect the season finale to be a time travel episode. And can we talk about that hour? Dude, we got an official hour watching this episode. Like, it wasn't 52 minutes, 55 minutes, 53 minutes, nothing like that. It was an official, well, it was like an hour and a couple minutes. But dude, it was so great to have that hour because they jam-packed a lot of stuff in there. Now, majority of this episode took place in, you know, the future or whatnot with the time travel and the time stone, but that's not a bad thing because we got to see a lot of stuff take place in that future. This episode started off with us seeing Pike and Batel, you know, eating breakfast and enjoying each other's company. Now, I have some more stuff to talk about with Batel later, but as of right now, we get to see them enjoying breakfast and having a nice, wonderful time while they're doing and fixing some stuff at this outpost that needed to be retrofitted. And at that time, Pike meets the commander, and as they're going over some of this stuff, some of the retrofits that's taking over on this base that's sitting out there in the middle of the neutral zone. Well, before you get to the neutral zone, which was another nice little callback to classic Star Trek, you know, with the neutral zone. But they're having their meeting, talking about the retrofits and everything, and this dude's son come in and it was like, well, I just really wanted to meet Captain Pike, you know, and Pike was like, oh, well, I love meeting the kids, you know, and as soon as the kid mentioned his name, you know, when he said that first name, I was like, ain't that one of the kids that Pike eventually saves? And he gave his last name, and boom, bam, it is what it is. And that is definitely one of the kids that Pike tries to save, but he's one of the ones that's meant to actually die. And this sends Pike in a whole tailspin because this entire season, we've seen things kind of just be adjusted a little bit, and Pike trying to change his fate. Now, we also seen a lot of things throughout this season as into where fate can't be changed, you know, so it was kind of a toss-up throughout the entire season whether we change fate or we don't change fate. You know, there's a big possibility between the two, and we saw that it was a 50-50 chance with Pike. You know, he felt some type of way about, you know, learning his future, and he felt like he was just going to go through the motions, and when it came time for him to sacrifice himself, he was going to sacrifice himself. But talking to Una and seeing a lot of the stuff go through this season, he felt like there's a possibility that he might can come out on the other side of this. And right when he was feeling that way from everything that was going on this season, he decided to write a letter to the kid and probably some of the other kids as well to tell them not to show up and do all this other stuff until his future self came in and intervened. Now, another classic callback, like I said, with the neutral zone was the Star Trek Wrath of Khan uniform that Pike had on when his future self came back to his past self, which was nice. Now, it looks a little bit different because, you know, styling and clothing and everything is just a little bit more advanced than it was back in those days. But it still has the whole general overall aesthetic of it. It still looks the same. It's just the texture is just a little bit different. It looks a little bit more combat ready, if you will. You know what I'm saying? It's not so much as cloth. It has like some of that, like maybe a little leather on it. It looked a little leather-esque on certain parts of it. So I'm not totally sure, but it looked good. It was very nice, clean, and crisp. It looked very, very good in my opinion. And that was a nice, wonderful callback in my opinion. It looked very great on Pike as well. So we see that, and we see that former Pike is past Pike is talking to future Pike, and they're having their whole banter go back and forth, and it was nice. And then he mentions that the Klingons, you know, this is all revolved around the monastery, gave him the time stone to allow him to come back and kind of correct his past self so he doesn't make the mistakes, because what he's about to do is going to have mass complications in the future. So boom, bam, we jump straight into future, and he's at this wedding and he doesn't even know what's going on. Like, you want to marry him and you want to marry her? Captain, you don't know our names? So like he's still trying to find his footing, but he comes straight in off rip. You know, they have this whole perimeter alert thing going on, and he comes in, and after they trying to kind of quell it a little bit, he has to talk to Spock. Because Spock is the only one that he can actually talk to about this, because this situation is so complex, man. I'm a past version of myself coming here to try to get a general understanding of what's going on, because I kind of changed the future a little bit. And Spock doesn't believe him. He thinks he's, okay, well, Captain, I think you're unfit for duty right now. So I think I should take over, because in the future, Spock is number one. And we knew this stuff. We knew that Spock was going to become number one and everything. So that's another nice little roundabout thing that's going on with the overall consensus of this season in the episode. We knew we get to see with Strange New Worlds, we get to see all of these iconic characters before they became the iconic characters. So we go into the future and we see that, you know, Pike is the captain, but, you know, because, you know, he changed everything and stuff, but Spock is number one, which is nice, man. It's so weird and it's so fun to see. And we also get bits and pieces of Scotty in this episode as well. Like, you didn't see him, but you heard him when Spock was trying to fix the conduit for the phaser. So it was very nice to have that whole transaction with Spock and Scotty. You know, it was nice. I'm giving her all she's got. So it was nice. But we see that, you know, he's talking to Spock about him being his past self. You know, Spock does a mind meld to kind of get a general understanding of what he's going through, and then Spock believes him. But now, while we're dealing with this, there's so many other things that's moving as well. We're now getting introduced to the Romulans, but we're not getting introduced to the Romulans. You know what I'm saying? So in the future, we're getting introduced to the Romulans, but then when Pike goes back, we're not going to be introduced to the Romulans because it hasn't gotten there yet. So he has the knowledge and the information of the Romulans, but there's nothing he can really do because, yet again, that's changing the future. But anyway, that is that, and this is this. You know, it gets real confusing with time travel, man. You know, you have to talk about the stuff that's in the present, but you have to talk about the stuff that's actually going on in the future, because the future is the present in this moment, and everything that was the present is the past in this particular moment until you go back, and then it becomes the present. Confusing, right? Hate time travel, but I also love time travel. But anyway, we're dealing with the Romulans because they decided to attack this base right outside the neutral zone, where, you know, Starfleet has, you know, kind of keep a little check on things out here with the Romulans in the neutral zone. But we all know how it came about with the Romulans. You know, they were like these big mysterious figures. They didn't know what they looked like and everything. Who are the Romulans? What do they look like? You know, so now we actually got to see a picture of the Romulans, like we do because we're Star Trek fans. But they didn't know. It came as a shock to them that they looked just like Spock. You got some splaining to do, Spock. So that was a big setup and everything, and it was nice because it was one of those classic iconic things from Star Trek, the Romulans. And it was nice to see the Romulans in action in this episode. We got to see the cloaking, the plasma, and we got to see them in their uniform, and we got to see some of the characters just be Romulans, and that's very good because they're very different from Vulcans. They're the same, but they're very different as well. The whole consensus, though, is, you know, that Pike now has to handle the Romulans and handle all this other stuff that he probably wouldn't have to intervene in, because he was supposed to sacrifice himself and he didn't. But because he didn't, so many other things started to fall like dominoes. You know, the Romulans, the Romulan War, Spock ended up dying. You know, there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm kind of all over the place because it's just so much to take in because we're dealing with a time travel episode. But he also learned that Una just disappeared. You know, Una's locked up in prison, and he's like, what? But see, that's something that he didn't know, and that also happened at the very ending of the episode. It's a lot to take in because it kind of jumped back and forth, and everything's starting to kind of move in the same sync the way that the future Pike told him. But while Pike is there, he's dealing with the Romulans and everything. We got a nice, wonderful glimpse of Paul Wesley's James T. Kirk, and I loved it. Now, I didn't, like, he had the look for me, so the look wasn't there. It wasn't the look. I was worried how he was going to act as Kirk, and I gotta say, I'm not disappointed. I feel like it might have could have just been a tad better, but I'm not disappointed. We also got the USS Farragut. Like there were so many moving pieces and so many moving parts in this entire episode, but it felt like classic Star Trek in my opinion, like with the action and everything. But I gotta give it up to Paul Wesley for Kirk, man. I really enjoyed his Kirk and him and Pike, kind of having that back and forth, him not having to give in to Pike, you know what I'm saying, because he's a captain as well. So it was nice to have that banter go back and forth and them trying to discover what they're going to do and who's going to lead the charge and everything like that. And them going back and forth, picking out, well, what should we do? It was nice to have that whole dialogue with those two iconic characters. And I got to give it up. I really enjoyed Paul Wesley's Kirk, and I cannot wait to see him in the show. I mean, I know it'll be a little while because we still have season 2, and Pike still has time before he actually has to sacrifice himself. But it was nice to have that whole moment and the whole interaction with the Romulans and that one flunky that, he didn't want to listen to his commander and invited the whole armada. And then Kirk coming in with the big bluff. Like, dude, it was nice. We get to see Pike do his usual thing and be, diplomatic and see how they kind of bump heads a little bit, but also agree, him and Kirk. So it was very nice. It was very wonderful. And just seeing both of them together was nice to have that whole scene. And it felt like classic Star Trek, in my opinion. It gave us so much with this episode. Sure, it was an hour long, and most of this episode was spent in the future dealing with everything, but it was such a great episode, and it gave us a lot of nostalgia with a lot of stuff that they were showing, but it also gave us the nostalgia with everything that was taking place. It felt like classic Star Trek, in my opinion. And we see that Pike had a lesson to be learned, and he finally learned that lesson at the end of the episode when he realized that, he tried to go the diplomatic route and everything, but that didn't really help in the end. And a full-blown war was started with the Romulans. And, because it's not something that he needed to, intervene in. You got to know when to let go, if you will. And him holding on to a possibility that he could save himself in the future, like I said, it was 50-50 throughout this entire season. And even in this episode, it felt like it was 50-50. But at the ending of this episode, Pike had kind of really just committed to himself, giving in fully and sacrificing himself, because he would rather sacrifice himself instead of all the billions and millions of people that could possibly die, and Spock, because we see that Spock died because the Romulans continued to attack them after the whole peace talks kind of broke down. And Spock, we didn't know if he actually died, but if he lived, he would never be the same again. And Pike wasn't having that. He felt if anybody needed to be hurt, it would be him. He would rather sacrifice himself instead of Spock and all the other millions of people or billions that would possibly die because of this war. So if I need to die first, or we know it's a whole ordeal. Pike has, he's settled into his role now. And at the end of the episode, we see him. Before then, he even walked out of the middle of the meeting and everything. He was discombobulated, man. But by the ending, we see that, he's kind of resigned himself to his fate, and he's understanding what his purpose and what his role is now, and he feels at peace with it. You know what I'm saying? He's still probably a little upset, but he feels at peace with it. And at the very ending of the episode, we see Captain Batel come in and arrest Una, and that leads into, her being imprisoned like she was in the future. And Pike says he's not going to let that go, so we have to wait till season 2. But I feel like we're so early in the mythos of Pike. We can't do this without Una. I mean, we totally can, but I'm saying we shouldn't have to, and we can't. Pike's gonna fight this to his utmost ability. Now, I feel like she could possibly come back, but she'll definitely be bumped down a rank, or possibly two. You never really know. There's this whole weird ordeal, man. But we know Pike's not giving up, and Batel has to know. I mean, I know it's all orders and it's coming from up above and everything, but she has to know that Pike's not gonna, we ain't cool no more. I mean, I know we've been sleeping together and we've been having fun and enjoying each other's company, but we not cool no more. You just arrested one of my closest friends. Like, we're not good no more. So, she admitted that she was sorry about it, but I mean, still, you have to realize it from Pike's perspective. No, 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 no. We're not good anymore. Overall, it was a great episode. All of the Easter eggy type stuff that, you know, that kind of just leads into real Star Trek mythos, and all the you know, the stuff about the Romulans, Kirk's planning, because he even pulled, you know, the Kirk maneuver. Like, there was so many things. There was Easter eggs, you know, the whole Wrath of Khan costume. Like, there was so much stuff in this episode, and this hour just felt like it was gonna last forever, and then it ended. But I gotta say, a great season, and I cannot wait for season 2. This is your boy, Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button so you can smash any more. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them and subscribe, but only if you really want to. Peace out.
I cannot complain because today, I'm doing my thing.